Having canned food in your pantry is a great way to have staples, but you don't always want to use them the way that you put them in there. So today I'm going to take beets and I'm going to turn them into candied beets, which are a sweeter version of a pickled beet. Now we're going to start, we've got 3 pint cans of beets. Now you could do this with other vegetables as well. You can see in my sample here I have pickles using the same syrup. You could use other vegetables, so you're going to have to play with it a little bit. And you can do some of both because we're not going to process them. They're not going to go in your pantry. They're just going to go in your refrigerator. So you've got a lot of flexibility with how much you want to do at any one time, how you want to package them up. But we're going to start with, we've got the beets ready to go. Make sure you've got them drained well. If you're using dill pickles, drain the liquid off those and then slice them in about 1/4 inch pieces. And we're going to start with 3 cups of granulated sugar. These are very sweet, by the way. These are not a diabetic version in any sense of the word. And then we're going to add 2/3 of a cup of sugar. Well, if you've got vinegar, excuse me, and you can use any flavor of vinegar that you have. You can use a distilled vinegar. I'm using a cider vinegar. Since we're using it on beets, you could use something that's a dark color like a berry vinegar or even a balsamic vinegar if you wanted to go that extreme. So we have the sugar, the 2 tablespoons of mixed pickling spices, and 2/3 of a cup of vinegar in here. And we're going to bring this to a boil. And because there is such a large portion of sugar compared to liquid, this is going to be a super saturated solution by the time we get done. And as a result, you're going to have to work definitely while it's still warm, or it's got so much sugar in it, it's almost going to act like candy would and start to harden on you. So bring this to a boil. Now while that's coming to a boil, you can go ahead and work with your beets. We've got them well drained. If you have a little bit of syrup, that would be okay, but you want to get them as drained as you can. And then simply put them into the container that you're going to use. I've got a quart jar here, and that would work. You could also have her put them in pint jars as I have here. You could put them into the little tiny containers if you want to give them away as gifts. Just remember to tell people that it needs to go in the refrigerator once they get them. You're also going to want to refrigerate this for about at least a week in order to have flavors develop. But the important thing to remember is that even though it looks like a pickle and it's in a home canning jar or whatever fancy jar you want to use, it's not something that you can store at room temperature. It will spoil and can cause foodborne illness. So make sure once you get this ready to go, once it's in the jar with the syrup over it, that you do put it in the refrigerator. Once you've had it come to a boil it just needs to come to a boil, and that'll dissolve all of that sugar in there. Then you're going to want to let it cool a little bit because even though we're using canning jars, which are tempered to withstand changes in temperature, this would be a dramatic change in temperature because the boiling point with the sugar that we have in there is going to be higher than the boiling point of water. Now we're just going to pour this over it, but we want to filter out all the canning spices. And so I've got a sieve here, and we're just going to pour it through. Notice how thick it is with that amount of sugar there. You could, if you wanted to experiment, you can do, a small jar of beets, a small jar of corn, a small jar of green beans, or different kinds of pickles with garlic and pickles without, just so you can decide which one you like. If you don't use all of the syrup, that's fine too. The pickles will keep for or the candied beets will keep for a long time in your refrigerator. But the syrup, if you strain through it and keep it in the refrigerator, it will keep by itself just as well. So you can decide later how you want to use it. Now because this is going in the refrigerator, there's no worry about headspace. We don't have to worry about if we have all the beets covered with syrup, although it would be a good idea because they're going to pick up more flavor if they are. But it takes away a lot of the must-dos that you find when we actually are canning to get things onto the pantry shelf. One thing I do recommend, however, is that you take a damp towel and you run it around the edge because we have so much sugar in here. If you have some of this sugar solution left around the rim, it's really going to adhere and really bind that lid to it. So try to make sure that you get that cleaned off well. You want to do that after you take servings out too, so that in between times when you take some out and then close the jar again, clean that rim again. Otherwise, the next time you may need a pry bar to get through that, or you may need to heat it up to try and get it warmed up. But there you go. It's candied beets or candied pickles or candied whichever vegetable that you want to use. You could also use canned fruits to come up with something similar. Peaches would be really, really nice. For Oklahoma Gardening, this is Barbara Brown.